Shalom, everybody. Welcome back to the Baal Shlom's Matan Torah, more specifically, A Time to Act, with commentary by Rebbe Rebbe Gottlieb. We're towards the end of A Time to Act, on the bottom of page 35. Let me just pull up the live stream in case there's any questions. Okay. In the last class, we spoke about the great importance and exacting nature of the learning itself. So much so that the Baal Shlom said, if one word of his writings is not understood, the whole thing falls apart. One cannot absorb and grasp all of the matters as intended without knowing precisely, word by word, what is meant to be relayed. Hence the importance of an authentic tradition, which is in essence what we're speaking about here in the Baal Shlom's mission statement, being to combat the great inauthenticity of his generation, of inauthentic authors and disseminators of corrupted versions of the wisdom of Kabbalah. And of course, he felt it was time to act and go contrary to his way, as we'll see in the words here in today's lesson, to provide an authentic source for the authentic wisdom. We also spoke about the great owl. That is a remez, it's a hint, it's a metaphor for those who want to prey upon the weak of consciousness, the weak of not having a derech, of a road in their spiritual work, and that these generally manifest in ways that are not immediately in the ways of our tradition, meaning there's many different types of Kabbalistic learnings and maybe New Age mixtures that speak about spiritual matters, when the disseminators or leaders in those communities or ways of learning themselves have no real authentic connection to the tradition, in contrast to the Baal Shlom or other great Kabbalists, the Arizal, the Vilna Gaon, the Baal Shem Tov, the Ramchal, the Rashash, and the like. So I added to that of how much more so we need to be careful and also investigate those who do disseminate and do have some authentic connection to the wisdom, but they themselves still have intentions that are personal and perhaps also corrupted. So one needs to be careful. The Baal Shlom begins. Again, we're at the bottom of page 35, where it continues. And some of these people, meaning the greats of the generation that he was referring to, or who calls themselves the greats of the generation, or who are deemed to be the greats of the generation by the masses, and some of these people go as far as to set themselves on high, as would be fitting for the leaders of the generation, and pretend to know how to distinguish among the books of the ancient and early masters, so as to instruct the public regarding which book should be studied and which book is not to be dealt with, because it is full of imaginings, God forbid. For this, they are deserving of contempt and wrath. For until now, such discernment was reserved only for 1 out of 10 leaders of the generations. And today, ignorant fools abuse it. Wow. Not just leaders, not just anyone who has an opinion to themselves. 1 out of 10, we're saying 10 of the greatest of the great, and 1 out of 10 was able to make such discernments for the generation as what was proper to learn and how to appropriate oneself in their inner work. So the Rebbe Shita says here, the Baal Shlom makes a sharp attack on some of those who are called the greats of the generation, and who make a show by giving rulings to the public regarding what to learn and what to teach, etc., thereby actually deserving contempt and wrath. These people know absolutely nothing about the inner meaning of the Torah, yet they even feign to lead the masses in these sublime matters. Even in worldly matters, it's seen that one who suffers from headaches would not go to a foot specialist. So why is it that in spiritual matters, people rely on rabbis who have no real knowledge of such things? At the most, they could ask these rabbis regarding some matter in Jewish law, halacha, which is in the area of expertise, but not, as is generally accepted today, that a person who has knowledge in the Talmud is thereby certified also to make rulings and give guidance regarding inner matters. And that could be fair to say that someone who is a master in the Talmud or halacha, Jewish law, let's say if we were to compare it to university studies, lahavdil, need to be a distinction, but just to use that as an example, if someone is going for their PhD in neuroscience, and it just so happens that on the way they had learned multiple things regarding the stomach and its details and intricacies and health. So they might know something. They receive things along the way of receiving their specialty. But even so, one would not defer to that individual if they needed a specialist in that matter. So too, in today's generation, because we are so far removed from the inner meanings of the Torah and that type of learning, teaching, and Masorah, tradition, so the leaders and educators in Torah institutions are mostly adequate in Talmud and Jewish law. And they might have picked up a lot on the way that would provide them efficient means to give guidance to individuals. But in terms of the deepest guidance that we're speaking about on how to relate to our inner work in a precise manner, not necessarily the case. Not so simple by the definitions that we see here. So more food for thought to imagine to ourselves who we have or desire to choose to be our leaders, counselors, guidance, individuals, and the like. There's also this faulty idea in the Torah world. The Rebbe Shita says that there's this notion that if everyone knew the Gemara like me, if everyone knew Aleph Shas and could finish the Talmud perhaps even multiple times, the Jewish people were holding at that level, then the Mashiach would be here. We would be in the redemption. But he says that's not what is written in the Zohar. Meaning to say, to actualize and manifest our most desired reality, which is redemption, Geula, which starts first and foremost within the consciousness of every single individual, and then creates waves collectively for us to get there as a nation, and therefore as humanity, then it's kind of a joke, unfortunately. In relation to what really needs to be done, it just doesn't hold. It's not relevant. The notion of if I have X amount of wisdom and everyone was like that, how perfect the world would be. Not the case. And it's a digression to speak about the notion of the Geula and Mashiach, but since we're on the topic, as this type of learning in the mission statement relates to the expediting, the desire to expedite and bring that inner transformation of consciousness, which would then create the global transformation of consciousness, that people pray for and desire Mashiach, the Redeemer. But the notion of it, at least in the modern Torah world, is that there will be new levels of peace, spiritual attainment, surely, and that we can kick our feet back, so to speak. But it's possible to argue that once that condition comes, being the condition of redemption of consciousness, being that we're finally free from the ego, which is enslaving us, that we can finally do true work. Meaning until now, we're performing an attempt to get to a refined state, hopefully, in order to serve the Creator and the other. And until then, it's a performance act. We're trying to get to the authentic level, the true level of doing it with proper intention, as opposed to for ourselves alone. So the Mashiach that people are praying for and wish would come immediately, it's not the Mashiach. The Rebbe said very strongly recently, he said that if Beit HaMikdash was built today, it would crumble in an instant. We don't want it to be built. We don't want the Beit HaMikdash. We do. Objectively, in terms of the big picture, we want to do the inner work, meaning build the inner Beit HaMikdash, because we are called the Beit HaMikdash according to the Zohar. The Beit HaMikdash is one of many code words for the soul, for the Malchut, which was representing all of the collective souls of Klal Yisrael and humanity. So to desire the Beit HaMikdash on a surface level, meaning, I want the temple right here, right now, it doesn't match reality, because we're so far from the desired refinement that the Creator wants us to be at, that if such a magnificent physical structure, which is only the effect of all the causes of the main thing, which is the inner work and the inner building of the Beit HaMikdash, that's first and foremost on all levels, it would crumble instantly. But with this type of learning, slowly but surely, we can unveil those aspects within us that we call the nations of the world, in order that they be converted to the quality of Yisrael. Yisrael splits into two words, Yashar, Keil, straight to the Creator. Meaning we want to transform our intentions and all the aspects of our wills to receive within ourselves to be proper, being that we can finally just give in order to give, and then we can even, on a higher level, receive in order to give. The Baal HaSulam continues, middle of page 36. And for this reason, the comprehension of these matters in the public mind has been greatly confounded. No, this is 100 years ago, give or take. How much more so today? With technology, and again, the thousands and thousands of publications that anyone can find with a simple Google search or an Amazon search. It's amazing to think about. And what's more, an atmosphere of disrespect has been created, says the Baal HaSulam. Everyone considers it enough to flick through this material in a spare moment in order to reflect and comment on these lofty matters. They hurriedly cover the entire exalted world of wisdom and the authentic soul of Judaism in a single swoop, like the angel Gabriel, and then arrive at conclusions, each according to his current state of mind. And these are the reasons that have caused me to behave contrary to my usual rule. And I have decided that it is time to act for God, to save that which can still be saved. So I have taken upon myself to reveal a certain measure of the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah in order to disseminate it among the populace. The Rebbe Shlita says on the spot, Baal HaSulam was provoked to open up a small portion of the wisdom of Kabbalah, that is, only the amount fitting to be revealed, so that people could clearly see the difference between a forgery and the truth, which is amazing to contemplate, considering that there were times in the Baal HaSulam's life where he was writing 18 plus hours a day. To look at the hundreds upon hundreds of essays written Of course, the entire commentary and translation of the Zohar, and all of the Talmud Esrei Sfirot, to imagine that all of those revelations are but a sliver of the true wisdom. Wow, amazing to imagine what else is in store for our discoveries, whether it's generations to come or it's in a different state of consciousness beyond the body. Either way, it's exciting. He continues, in recent times, this wisdom is very urgently needed due to the inability to maintain a minimum of the Jewish way of life without the light of the inner meaning of the Torah. This is in contrast to earlier generations, where there were higher souls and the global situation was entirely different, and therefore it was possible to maintain the Jewish way of life without reliance on the inner meaning of the Torah. Thus, in current times, there is a need for the inner meaning of the Torah due to a lack of choice, for it is impossible to perceive any authentic direction and to have the strength to follow any authentic direction without the inner meaning of the Torah. This indeed is the meaning of the ancient saying, as brought in the Zohar itself in Parshas Naso 124b, that the redemption will come only by means of the wisdom of Kabbalah. This, of course, does not mean to say that we only have Kabbalah and that's all we need. God forbid. We need a balance. But the Torah of the exile has been the revealed Torah. The Talmud and the Halacha, as it has been clarified and worked through, leading up to our generation, where today we have great clarity and anyone can get the answers they need very quickly, whether it's a Halacha hotline, or it's Ask the Rabbi application on your smartphone, or it's just having someone at your disposal, as opposed to maybe in ancient times having to walk God knows how long to hopefully find a leader that can guide you. Because we've built up the body of the Torah, meaning the body of our collective soul for all this time, as said beautifully by my good friend Abraham Lowenthal, that for 2,000 years we've been reading the chords and reading the chords and reading the chords and reading the chords. And it's time to play the music. It's finally time in this generation to continue to disseminate and involve ourselves in a balanced approach to Torah learning, in contrast to the majority that is the body, for good reason, but at some point, of course, there needs to be a balance. Hi, Tzila. Thank you for your question. The question is, would you recommend Giving, which is what we're reading here, as a first introduction book to a newcomer? Are there other books you can pair with it? Surely this is an amazing introductory book for anyone who wants a taste of the philosophy and worldview that is the authentic Kabbalistic path. And it's important to note that the learning here is not Kabbalah itself. There's different aspects of Kabbalah that can be compared, havdil, to important to make a distinction between, let's say, in secular learning, humanities and the sciences. There's a science portion of Kabbalah that's very mathematic and exacting, that has to do with different processes of the soul and different levels of consciousness between worlds, spheres, and the like. And then there is the humanities, which has to do with our inner work, the service of the Creator and others. And of course, we need the balance of the two. And to balance Giving with another book, there are free PDF downloads. It should be in the link in the description of the video, actually translated by my friend Abraham Lowenthal, who I quoted just a couple minutes ago. I'm saying for an English speaker, it's a great way to match with Giving, whether it's the first two chapters of Peticha, which have been translated into English, or In a Work, which is a collection of quotes in some type of order and fashion from the Rebbe Shlita, as well as spiritual principles, which is a short summarization of our inner work, taken from excerpts of a chapter out of one of the Rebbe's books, put into a short version. The introduction to Zohar, as called by, given that it's a compilation by Yedida Cohen of Tzfat, it's called Tapestry for the Soul. Amazing, amazing book. Not only does it have beautiful translations of the Baal Sulam himself in the text, but Yedida, she does an amazing work in making it very personal and adding certain questions and contemplations between the Baal Sulam's paragraphs so that one can really connect to it on a whole different level than just the text itself. And she brings excerpts as well from the Rebbe Zitzal and Rebbe Gottlieb, the Rebbe, and the like. So that would be another recommendation for beginners. What is to say and not to say when telling what Kabbalah is? I don't quite understand the question. Meaning, if someone was to ask what Kabbalah is, what to say and what not to say. Rebbe Aryeh Kaplan Zitzal, who is a very published translator of great works from Rabbi Nachman, and has also quoted Rav Ashlag, the Baal Sulam, within his works. He says that Kabbalah can be described as the Jewish tradition with a capital T, because it's the primary thing of our tradition. All of Judaism as we know it, whether it's the laws and what we do practically day to day, is all rooted in the spiritual principles and roots that we learn in the Kabbalah. So one can say that it's the tradition with a capital T, meaning it's the source of all that we have today. What not to say? Good question. Depends on the context. I think it's such a particular question depending on who one is speaking to try to gauge where they're at in their life and their journey. But if someone was to simply ask, what is Kabbalah to say? It's the inner tradition of Judaism. Hope that answers your question. If not, if you want to clarify more so, I see the awkwardness of introducing it to a Jew. So I think there's many ways to put it. If you know the individual, then you can gauge best how to approach them. But to relate to them that there are generally the 4 levels of the Torah that we call pardes: Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod. Meaning there's different levels of interpretation and understanding. And Kabbalah is deemed the Chochmat Emet, it's the true wisdom. So to tell the individual that it's a piece of our oral tradition, just like the Talmud is. The Zohar and Kabbalah, as we know it, is arguably right in line with the oral tradition, because it was brought down from rabbi to student, father to son, and the like. So to let them know that most of the Torah that we know today and learn is revealed, meaning the body aspects of the Torah, and the inner aspects have also, by way of the Baal Sulam and other great tzaddikim of recent times, Hasidic masters, Rav Kook, just to name a few, have revealed also plenty of beautiful insights and ways to connect to our inner work. So to say that there's a body of the Torah and the soul of the Torah, the Kabbalah is the soul of the Torah. So if you want to discover ourselves and reveal the light within and come closer to our desired purpose by way of coming to know ourselves, then that would be what the methodology and science of Kabbalah can provide one. Okay, that's it for A Time to Act. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We shall continue B'ezrat Hashem with the help of the Creator into the next essay, revealing a handbreadth and concealing two. Just to give you a quick preview. It opens up a familiar saying of great and renowned people as they are about to reveal something deep is, quote, "Behold, I am revealing a handbreadth and concealing two." In general, our ancestors were extremely careful never to utter or write an unnecessary word. As our sages instructed us in Masechet Megillah of the Talmud, as quoted in the introduction to the Zohar with commentary of the Baal Sulam, quote, "A word for a selah," which is a coin, silence for two. This means that if you have something valuable to say, that has a certain worth. For example, a coin. Refraining from saying it is worth twice as much. Side note is that Chazal say in Pirkei Avos that silence is the vessel for wisdom. This is directed against those who spout forth superfluous words, lacking context or practical use, and only do so for the audience's pleasure and their literary quality. This manner of speaking was strictly forbidden in the opinion of our ancestors, and is obvious by examining their words. And as I shall prove in the essays that follow, we must therefore carefully consider this oft repeated maxim. Just a preview into what's to come, which I think is a very important idea because there's so much to be revealed, even though the Baal Shem clarified that it's only a sliver of all of the wisdom, that even so, the words had to be carefully chosen, as it's so valuable. And for every word revealed, there's arguably at least two that were hidden, hence the quote of such little being revealed in actuality. I look forward to learning that with y'all. So I'd like to go live at this time. I think right before the Rebbe's Shir at 6 o'clock is a good time for more people to tune in. That was my accounting, but it's not a guarantee. I'd like to be more consistent as far as the time goes. But in any case, if you want any other clarification or information, please feel free to contact me. My email is also in the description of the video. It's adampolonofsky@gmail.com. ADAMPOLINOVSKIY@gmail. You can ask me questions on anything as it pertains to the learning or it pertains to books and the like. And surely I can also relay the questions to the Rebbe, who is the real spiritual master. I'm just reading from the book. Tov. Thanks again. All the best.